Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And before we begin, we acknowledge that we're in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of the First Nations and the Métis people on this land, and we show respect to them today. We acknowledge that we have important neighbors in the Wata Mohawks and the First Nations of Moose Deer, Shawniga, Wasauksing, Magnetawan, Henley Inlet, Nipissing, and the Dokies. As we learn from our First Nation partners, I want to stress the importance of accepting our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth, her plants, her animals, and our shared peoples. We must ensure that the decisions we make today will take into consideration the future of our children and that of our children's children's. And as settlers on this land, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. So I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for the approval of the agenda with the addendum that you would have received afternoon, which has some correspondence related to item 5A. So thank you. Everybody okay? Approval of the agenda with that addendum? And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? No? Okay, I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of council held on October 21st, 2024. Could I have a mover? And a second? You can't second, I'm sorry, because you weren't there. Ted. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters. Consent application numbers B 2024-0017-H and B 2024-0027-H and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0024-H for Ellery. And secondly, zoning bylaw application number R 2024-0022-H for Lukasik. Could I have a mover? And Ken, a seconder. All in favor? Moving into a public meeting. Thank you. Council will now hold public meetings for proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent or passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment and who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide your full name and address to the clerk. No one other than the prescribed persons may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of Council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. The purpose of consent application number B 2024-0017-H and B 2024-0027-H for Ellery is to create two new rural lots with a frontage on Clear Lake Road. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0024-H for Ellery is to rezone the proposed severed lots to the rural exception 65 zone. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on October 16th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered to provide in accordance with requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the Township received any correspondence with respect to these applications?
Correspondence has been received from Brian Bobby and David Purdy.
And is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these applications? Okay, how about Mr. Bobby goes first and go to the podium, make sure the little green light goes on and introduce yourself and your address, please.
Thank you very much. Brian Bobby, 2240 Westman Road, Mississauga, Ontario, L5K 1M5 is my mailing address. Local address is 2 Kennedy Road, Seguin Township. And Madam Chair, councilors, senior township staff, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today. We recognize and we realize that in a public meeting, it's our one opportunity to speak, at least required under the Planning Act, our one opportunity to speak. So we appreciate that. I'm an environmental scientist. Some of you know me. I'm recently retired as head of an environmental consulting firm in Toronto. Don't hold that against me, please. But I'm also the lake steward for Clear Lake Association and a local property owner not too far away from the subject property that we're talking about. I recently submitted a letter of input as Clerk Jeffrey mentioned it, and it's a matter of record, but I'm going to keep this fairly brief because I'll just hit the succinct and the high points of that letter. Probably the best opportunity to keep things moving along. Council may be aware that the proponent, Mr. Ellery, is a professional developer, and he's from Guelph, and he's a fine gentleman. I talked to him twice, and he has understandably not disclosed what he plans to develop on the property, if anything, and I understand. So he's not required to do so under a consent application, the modest and brief consent application avenue. And I've had 2 discussions with him, and he's engaged, and he'd like to be engaged with Clear Lake Association as well, and the information that we have in Clear Lake. As you know, Seguin's current OP, Section B311, gives its planners and council significant authority to protect the most pristine lakes and of course surrounding woodlots in the township. Clear Lake that's adjacent to the property is such a lake. It's under the OP, it's in Appendix 1. It's a groundwater fed, over threshold and highly sensitive lake. And it's a lake trout lake, designated lake trout lake as well. Arguably, it's the most pristine lake in the township and most sensitive to human development, as it's illustrated by it being the only lake that has an increasing total phosphorus significantly trending up in the township. Recently, Director of Planning, Mr. Taylor Elgie, had some meetings with us with local landowners, which was terrific. He showed a topographical map that shows that there's a significant portion of this property, the retained lot and the to be severed lots proposed, that do drain into Clear Lake directly and indirectly into Clear Lake. It is the property is straddling the watershed, goes north to Clear Lake and south to eventually to Lake Joe through Hamer Lake as well. And the property also drains into a captured wetland, an on-property wetland as well, which doesn't have an outfall. It probably goes in and charges the groundwater aquifers that feed Lake Joe and Clear Lake. The proposed lake, therefore, the proposed retained lot then is effectively on Clear Lake. It is effectively a shorefront property because it does drain significantly to that spot, and it is subject to different rules under the rural zoning that's requested. It's subject to different rules than the SR zoning that most of the other properties on Clear Lake are, which is unfortunate. There are 2 proposed lots, of course. One of them is a very desirable lot that backs onto Rocky Crest Golf Course. And certainly if I was a developer, I'd really love to have that lot if I was intending to develop townhomes that back onto a golf course. They're very highly desirable and would be an effective way of developing that lot. Again, Mr. Ellery has not indicated how he's going to be developing that lot, and he doesn't need to under the current consent application. The OP allows the council to require a plan of subdivision and an EIS on properties that fit certain requirements. And one of them is the need to, the council to consider the orderly development of township properties and that properties deemed both capable and appropriate for division into numerous lots, or where there are indications on the scale of development could go beyond that for which the consent process is intended, a plan of subdivision shall be required by Seguin Township. That's your call. That's up to you, of course. But the detail isn't there yet, and the public, I know, doesn't have any input to that detail. So hence the discussion today. Further, that the proposed RU and RU 65 likely allows the circumvention of certain tree cutting requirements, et cetera, that we have as SR lots on Clear Lake as well. So the ask that I'm looking for, that I'm asking of council is whether this file is deferred or not, but that more data is needed on the property. Whether it be a plan of subdivision to understand what's going on, or an environmental impact study. This property is part of the natural heritage system. Section C of the OP looks to protect those natural heritage systems. It's a deer wintering area, for instance, and it's also a property that's amenable and capable to go beyond the 3 lots as well. So I ask and I entreat and suggest that the council look deeper on this, perhaps an EIS that is peer reviewed and appropriate for that site, even without a site sketch and a detail, to see what is to be protected on that property and how to keep Clear Lake and the lakes to the south protected as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Purdy, you want to speak next?
Brian. My name's David Purdy. My address is 153 Clendenin Avenue, Clendenan, Toronto, Ontario, postal code M6P 2W9. My local address is 24 Kennedy Road on Clear Lake. We have been on Kennedy Road forever. In fact, my grandfather, Harvey Kennedy, built Kennedy Road by hand in the 1940s. So we are deeply, deeply rooted in that property, in that area of Clear Lake. And we intimately know the subject properly at 128 Clear Lake. In fact, my mom, who lived at the lake, as most people know, for about 25 years full time, before the current owners purchased the property, spent years and years and years mapping out ski trails and walking trails through the property with the permission of the former owners. And we have spent an awful lot of time there as a family. It is a magnificent property, as Brian has pointed out. It's a natural heritage system property, and there are fewer and fewer and fewer of these that are sizable and permit wildlife continuous passage and habitat as Clear Lake Road intensifies and being squeezed by the golf course on the other side. I really hope council is going to look overall at the impacts on these kinds of properties and trying to organize what happens on Clear Lake Road. So that's a preliminary issue. The next issue Brian explained very well, but I'd like to explain how he got there and how I've participated in this the last few weeks. We are just outside the written notification area for this project. So I came to it a bit late, aside from the fact that I was in the hospital having shoulder surgery. But Brian and I and a couple of other neighbors have worked pretty hard on this for the last couple of weeks, trying to get a grip on what the project is all about. And it's not as simple as it appears at first blush. It's in effect, and the most problematic effect is that it's going to create a retained lot that sits at the bottom of a drainage basin. As Brian has pointed out, it feeds into a pond, into a wetland, and all of that goes into Clear Lake. That's fine. That's part of the property. But what we were comfortable with until very recently was that there would be very significant setback requirements, i.e. 300 meters from Clear Lake, that would protect and assure that retained lot property that is so sensitively situated would not have development activity that would impact the lake unduly. What we discovered late last week, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the staff report on this came out until last Thursday, perhaps. That's the first I saw it. When we looked at the staff report and then spoke with the planning department afterwards, we discovered that in fact, this property, the way the scheme has been set up, will in fact be exempt from all those setback requirements. So in effect, what's being created is a lakefront lake, albeit on the other side of Clear Lake Road, but it is a lakefront lake, and it's not going to be subject to any setback requirements, any of the normal LSR setback requirements that the rest of us would be as lakefront property owners. So we've got an overcapacity lake, not capable of producing any more lots. We've got another lot being added to that, and it somehow has a special status, and it's about 25 meters, I would say, from the lake. And there are, as Brian pointed out, no shoreline buffer requirements, no nothing. So we were surprised to learn that last week. And I think that in and of itself might be surprising to council, and it might give pause here to just sort of step back and see what really the objective of the scheme is. I think Brian's done a really capable job, and I support everything he's had to say, particularly with respect to the larger property in the middle, which is configured in a way that couldn't possibly be anticipating anything other than ultimately being associated with some sort of commercial activities connected to the golf course. I know, and Brian has acknowledged that no such plans have been disclosed, and the owner's free to take his time and decide what he wants to do with the property. I have one further ask. I support everything Brian has said, and I'm so grateful that we have a resource like him. He puts a lot of time and effort in as our lake steward. He's, I think, the most experienced environmental resource that the township has access to, and he's free. And he's a straight shooter, and I think you should listen to what he's just explained. But my additional ask is this: the staff report came out last week, and we wrestled with it a bit to really understand what the intent was on the retained lot. The staff report makes note of the fact that no other comments or objections had been received as of last week. My assurance to you is, and based on about 6 years of involvement on another property on the other side of our lakefront, 97B Clear Lake, based on the very, very active community participation in that project over a number of years, I would suggest that you would have had lots and lots of commentary from the Clear Lake constituency had it not been November, when most people are not around the lake, and had they had access to what we learned about late last week in terms of what's really being created in terms of an ad hoc unregulated lakefront lot. So I'm asking, and I know there is no Planning Act right to do this, but I'm asking that council take a look at extending the public commentary period, because I think there's going to be public commentary. So again, I support Brian's suggestion that we need to maybe take a pause here and look particularly at that retained lot. But I would be deeply grateful if you could provide an avenue for concerned people to get their comments in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And your comments will be taken to, and I see Stefan, I saw that you were coming by Zoom, but we're glad to have you in person. So please do your introductions. You know the drill, and make sure the little light's on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of council. My name is Stefan Sherbach, planner with Plantscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge, P1L 1Z8. Thank you for the time to speak today. I'm here representing the numbered company by Mr. Ellery, and unfortunately he's not here, sends his regrets today. I believe he is observing the meeting through your YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank staff for their help with this file. It's been a bit of time working through some of the nuances with this property. Several discussions about the natural features of the property, as well as the protection measures that are included in your official plan. I do want to reiterate, this is not a waterfront property. I think it's pretty obvious. There's a road in front of it. It's a rural property. It's designated. It's not a waterfront property like a cottage property. So I just wanted to make that crystal clear at the onset here. As mentioned in the staff report, it's situated on Clear Lake Road, municipal road, maintained, quite a bit of traffic going back and forth, and it is a rural property within your official plan and zoning bylaw. Yes, it's a very large property that's currently developed with a small storage building. So the application in front of you is to sever off 2 rural lots and have 1 retained lot. That's it. There's no other plans with this property. The speculation about some massive golf course development is kind of laughable, actually. There's been no discussions, even with Mr. Bobby. I know that Mr. Ellery has had several conversations with them, and he was very clear with him that he has no plans with the property. He may wish to sell it in the future. He may wish to develop it, but we all know that there are rights within your rural property and permitted uses. If there's any changes, it has to come in front of you. It's obvious in this case. So the applicant has purchased the property, as noted earlier, for outdoor recreational activities. The owner and their kids do walk the trails, have biking, hiking, ski trails. So they really have no plans. They do have that property, just, you know, more for an additional rural property. And he is does have a cottage property elsewhere. So taking a look at the staff report, in my mind, it contains a very accurate planning review of the applicable policies. It's very similar to our planning justification report that was submitted with this application. And my client and I are fully supportive of staff recommendations to support the consent conditions that are listed in the report, as well as the recommendation to approve the zoning bylaw application. However, we do understand that there may be a second wetland that when you look at the air photographs, it looks like it's an extension of the lake. It may not have been a wetland at the northeasterly corner of the property. And having said this, since the applicant has already agreed to protect the larger wetland on the opposite side of the property with applicable setbacks in accordance with your official plan, he has agreed to identify this new wetland property and apply similar protection measures for future development on that property. So identifying the wetland, adding the 50-meter development, which is in your official plan in order to protect that feature, he's willing to do that, willing to defer the application in order to ensure your zoning bylaw is correct and accurate. Again, by deferring this, willing to put that protection measure in place, it seems wrong to support it on one side of the property and ignore it on the other side. So he's looking to do that. So with respect to some of the issues of concern, there's no ulterior motive here. A plan of subdivision is ridiculous. At this point, there's just looking to sever two lots. With respect to, again, protecting the lake itself, it's not a waterfront property. It doesn't have the same restrictions as a waterfront property. It is rural, and again, this is a fact. With respect to additional environmental studies, again, I think that's overkill. The applicant does have rights to develop the property today. He has rights to develop within that 50-meter wetland because it's not in your zoning bylaw. So they could come in for a building permit, build on the corner of that property right adjacent to the wetland and receive a building permit tomorrow. So what he has agreed to do in this instance through the severance application is to identify these wetland pockets, provide the protection measures that are in accordance with your official plan, and if he decides to develop, you'll utilize those policies at that place. So he's willing to go that extra mile to identify those features and do that, knowing that he has the rights to develop it today. Again, with respect to the two other properties, there's no plans. He's just wanting to exercise his rights. We all know that planning policies change over time. He's got a couple of young kids. He's looking to perhaps, create some lots for them at a future date. But again, there's no ulterior motive here. So in conclusion, we fully agree with staff's assessment of the property. We do support the recommendations, but again, however, my client's agreeable to defer this to make sure the zoning schedule is accurate, reflects that, and adds the 50-meter setback to that one wetland on the corner of the property. So thank you for your time today. If there are other comments, I would just respectfully request an opportunity to respond to them if need be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions for any of Mr. Bobby, Mr. Purdy, or Mr. Scarrett? Councillor Getty.
I actually have a question of Taylor in regards to.
Okay, well, we'll ask Brady. It's Brady's file, so I believe Brady is online. Brady, do you want to comment on what you've heard today? And then we'll have Councillor Getty has a question for you.
Through you, Your Worship, I don't have any additional comments to add. Staff do think it's prudent that the application be deferred. I am here, though, for any questions.
Okay, Councillor Getty.
Thanks, Brady. First, I'd like to say thank you to the applicant for agreeing to recognize the wetlands. My question, Brady, is a procedural question. How do those wetlands, how are they identified and how will they be designated and recognized?
I actually will defer this question to Taylor in terms of how they will be designated in the future.
Go ahead, Taylor.
To Councillor Getty, the portion of the wetland that's on the proponent's property is just a little sliver. We'll likely identify that small little pocket as EP, and then put a site-specific zoning on the retained lands that says a 50-meter setback from the EP zone. Internally, we aren't certain whether that's an extension of the lake or the wetland. The only way to know for certain would be to do EIS. However, the official plan says if you're over 50 meters from a local wetland, that supplants a need for an EIS. So that's a tool and a practice that we've done in the past on other applications.
Sorry, then if there's a requirement of an EIS being done on that, that will be subsequent, that would be identified and subsequent to determining whether it is part of Clear Lake or part of an environmentally protected area.
From my understanding, the proponent would rather just do a 50-meter setback from it, negating the need for an EIS. If they wanted to go within that, based upon the information we have today, that would cause a need for one, but they're just looking to do an increased setback to avoid a the cost and time of that.
And would that identification of that area be completely by the applicant, or would that be jointly with our staff here at the township?
Jointly, we would look at the aerial photography we have in-house, have the proponent review it because they have appeal rights and it's their land. But I think it's pretty clear where the delineation of it is on the private property based upon the aerial photography.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Collins.
Right direct to him. How long has Mr. Ellery owned this specific property? Do you have any idea?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's a good question. If I were to hazard a guess, it's been maybe a few years, maybe
So just
under
recent.
5.
Yeah, just
maybe.
recently then.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Councillor Bazinski.
Thank you. A question for Taylor. Taylor, there was another property that was near Osler Lake that we put a restriction on for 300 meters. It was for a horse situation, but it would be the same thing for a septic tank and tile field. Would we not have, in this case, a 300-meter setback for their septic system?
Through your worship to Councillor Bazinski, if it's the application I'm thinking of, the 300-meter setback applied to new developments. In that case, it was agricultural. In this case, it's similar. The newly created lot or the new development rights will have a 300-meter setback. The proponent has applied to maintain their existing development rights within the retained lot, subject to an increased setback of 50 meters from this unmapped wetland.
I'm not sure I understand whether or not it's a retained lot or a newly created lot. Is there not something in our planning documents that says that if a lake's over capacity or over threshold, that any new development would have to be 300 meters from the water?
Through your worship, and that's essentially it's the new development which has the official plan policy applied to it. So if we were to try to force or instill a 300-meter setback on the retained lands, and if it were to be appealed, I don't know if the township would be in the strongest position, as that portion of the property does have retained or does have development rights today. For instance, if they were to just have a building permit submitted and approved as of right now, we essentially wouldn't be having this conversation, and they have the right to a building permit for that portion of the property.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about a building permit. I'm just talking about the septic system. Would they not have to have that 300 meters from the water? I think whether it's new or existing on an overcapacity lake, my understanding is that any new septic system would have to be 300 meters back.
Through your worship, this is something we can go into further detail at the subsequent staff report, because I think staff's recommending a deferral decision and kind of explain the difference between the retained lots and the severed lots. But severed lots 1 and 2 would have that, but I respectfully think it might be better if we give us a bit of time. We can go over it, put it in a report for council's review.
Yeah, and it may be that the applicant would be willing to consider that as well anyway, because when you think about it, there's a certain distance from the lake before they even get to his property. So it wouldn't be a total 300-meter setback on his property. It would be a 300-meter setback from the edge of the lake. So I'm quite happy to defer it and have this discussion, at a later time.
Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Fellner.
So I have another question for you, Taylor. You're still there. Haven't disappeared. I understand the rationale and the difference between what's currently allowed on the lot versus what would be allowed on 2 new lots created. I don't really have a problem with that. Where my concern with the retained lot lies with the access to the Clear Lake Road. And I know you've mentioned that the new developed lots would be conditional upon receiving a driveway entrance permit from Public Works. I didn't see anything that gave me any sense of comfort that the road in front of the retained lot had been evaluated and a driveway location cited that would comply with safe stopping distances with horizontal and vertical sight lines, because that particular little piece of road is not that not that it's in a category by itself, but it's a particularly dangerous section of road of the Clear Lake. There's 2 or 3 sections that are really, really dicey. I guess there's lots of people that end up in that ditch every winter. And I would want to see an approved entrance. I think in this particular case, an approved entrance or a remedy to fix to provide a approved entrance would be necessary. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that can possibly be addressed in the deferral and the staff report, subsequent staff report. Thank you. So we move on. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0022-H for Lukasik is to develop a cottage that exceeds the maximum height permissions and shoreline requirements. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on September 20th, 2024. Notice was therefore considered provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? I believe, Ryan, just make sure the light is on and identify yourself with your address. Oh, he's just pulling up your presentation, I think. Thank you, Stefan.
The light is on.
Yeah, just.
While Mr. Jeffries is queuing that up, I also have paper copies if everyone would like to do the old-fashioned way. Well, the trees have died already, so. Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Allen. I'm a registered professional planner, and I'm here today assisting Mr. Ed Lukasik with his proposed zoning bylaw amendment at 17 Jean Marie Road on Little Lake Joseph. The subject property is very large. It's part of the original 100-acre block that extends all the way from Little Lake Joseph Road all the way back to Stanley House Road. And there's a number of private and public roads that cross through the property. The property has frontage on Little Lake Joseph and on Mirror Lake. It's over 70 acres in area. It has over 760 feet of straight line frontage, over 1,300 feet of actual frontage if you follow the bay around, and over 800 feet of frontage on Mirror Lake. There's an existing dwelling that's approximately 20 meters back from the shoreline, a one-story boathouse with associated dock, 2 sleeping cabins, and the entire bay is owned but as one property. There are no neighboring properties that share this bay. As was explained, the application that's in front of you today is related to the construction of a new dwelling. There's also a proposal to expand the existing one-story boathouse and dock. Those existing structures will be removed and new structures constructed to replace them. There's a new 1.5-story boathouse and dock proposed on a new location of shoreline that doesn't have any development. And there's a proposal to remove existing sleeping cabin number 2. In order to get there, we need a number of amendments to the bylaw. One is related to the increase of dwelling height. 2, related to the shoreline setback of the dwelling itself. You'll remember that your bylaw requires 20 meters minimum setback. We're proposing to increase the setback to 66 meters. This is to account for this additional height that we have asking for. The maximum dock width is limited. We're effectively asking for double the amount or almost double the amount, as if the lot would be severed into 2 pieces. And the same thing with the dock area, double the dock area and double the boathouse. There's an existing second sleeping cabin on the property. That sleeping cabin on shore will be demolished, and that sleeping cabin relocated into the new 1.5-story boathouse. Some site photos of the property. This is the existing dwelling at the back of the bay. This is from the center of the bay looking back towards the dwelling. You'll see on the site plan that the proposed new dwelling is directly behind the existing dwelling, and there is a substantial amount of trees separating that location from the shoreline. And then on the left side, you'll see the sleeping cabin number 1 and the existing 1-story boathouse that would be slightly expanded, as well as the dock. Looking towards sleeping cabin number 1 on the left, this is the building to be removed and the natural beach and the natural sand bottom. This is the location of the new proposed cottage. It will be located in the existing area of the current road that access the current cottage. There's a pine plantation in this location that is very level. So the grades are very amenable to the building design, this is the location of the new boathouse. There is significant fish habitat towards the back of the bay. This location moves away from that fish habitat, away from the back of the bay as well, and also complies with all of the setbacks and other requirements for the neighboring lot lines. There is a proposed new dwelling that has multiple parts to it. It has kind of lower wings that step up towards the center of the building. The green highlighted shaded roof area is the compliant height. The orange shaded area is the lower mansard roof, and the upper purple shaded area, which you can barely see, is the upper mansard roof. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with building techniques, but a mansard roof is a peaked roof with the top chopped off, and it has a roof deck. And the consequence of that is that a peaked roof and a mansard roof, the heights are measured differently. Height of a mansard roof is measured to the very top of the roof deck, whereas a peaked roof is measured to the midpoint of the roof. It can get very technical, but the point is that there are some kind of some minutia differences that we should focus in on. One, that the new dwelling is 2.75 meters higher than the maximum 10-meter amount of height that is permitted. However, if you actually look at the heights that are achieved through compliance with that 10-meter height limit, we actually achieve a height that's greater than 10 meters itself. So the center portion of the building is the piece that requires approval. If we make our way up towards the very tip-top portion, that top deck of the mansard roof, we're only looking for 1.65 meters of increased height and not the 2.75. We're hopeful that the increased setback combined with the existing vegetation on the shoreline, that additional height is not perceivable from the shoreline. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm a controller. In terms of a cross section, to give you an idea of how far back the building is, so that existing red shaded building today, a new dwelling could be built at that 20-meter setback at the 10 meters of height. We're moving back to 66 meters and asking for 2.75 meters of additional height, keeping in mind that 2.75 meters is just the very center tip-top portion of the building. Excuse me. Greg, forward is now backwards. The proposed changes to the dock and boathouse that are existing are very minor. You'll see the existing dock outlined in yellow, the proposed dock outlined in black, and then there is a slight expansion to the boathouse to the rear and to the side. So very much in keeping with the existing boathouse that's there today. There's an envelope proposed on the eastern part of the shoreline. This envelope is larger than the boathouse and dock that would be permitted. There is no design at this point. This is a future to be determined building. But to provide some flexibility in order to come, instead of coming back with a very specific design, a boathouse of this size and a dock of this dimension, we've defined an envelope. And inside that envelope, we would allow the standard boathouse that we would be allowed regularly, the 15 by 11 meters and the 23-meter dock. I mentioned severance potential. This lot has the ability to be severed potentially into 3 separate properties. Mr. Lukasig has no desire, and I want to stress that, to sever this lot. It simply is an example to show the development potential that could be achieved on this lot. There's no intention of maxing out all of the development rights on this property. In terms of the summary of the benefits of this application, there's a private bay with no neighboring property owners to be impacted. The lot has considerable area and frontage at the point that it could be severed into up to 3 lots. The setback is considerable, over 3 times the minimum setback. Most of the new dwelling height does comply. It's just that center portion. The added height is visually screened from the lake. The proposed amount of habitable space on this lot, the 2 sleeping cabins plus the dwelling, is very small compared to the potential that could exist if the lot was severed. And the same thing applies for the 3 multiple dwellings, the 3 sleeping cabins, the 3 1.5-story boathouses, as well as the area of the dock and the width of the dock. And I would also note that we've moved the boathouse away from the fish habitat location where it's zoned EP2. The existing sleeping cabin number 2 at the shoreline will be demolished. Sleeping cabin number 1 will be the only building left on this site within 20 meters of the setback. All buildings will either be in the water or back behind the 20-meter setback. A new septic system will service this the new dwelling, and the existing septic system will continue to serve the existing sleeping cabins. The development location drains away from Mirror Lake, which is an at-capacity lake, so some consideration was given in that regard. And then further, maximum coverage of 5% is permitted. The proposed lot coverage within 60 meters of the shoreline is less than 1%, and we're 0.4% over the entire lot. We're hopeful that the committee would be interested in supporting this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone registered to speak to this via electronic participation?
No one has registered to speak to this application.
And does council have any questions? Oh, I need you to take that down so we can see who's online. Sorry.
Is that mine?
No, I think Craig can do it. Okay. Councillor Bazinski, you have a question.
With respect to the boathouse, the 1.5-story boathouse, are you saying that it's a concept at this point in time, or do you have actual plans for it?
It's a concept at this plan, and that's why we have defined the envelope instead of a specific set of plans. And the expectation would be that within that envelope, that boathouse and dock would comply with the standard requirements.
And do you have any fisheries assessment studies to prove that there is no fish habitat within that envelope?
No studies have been completed. There is a portion of the shoreline that's zoned EP2, and this proposed dock and boathouse envelope is outside of it, as well as the existing dock and boathouse are also outside of that EP2 zoned area.
Okay, my only comments are I feel uncomfortable agreeing to a concept. I would suggest that the applicant come back when they have a firm proposal on that boathouse, and I'd be personally willing to consider the application, but not including a concept. And without any fisheries assessment, many studies have been done where biologists have come out and showed that the original zoning wasn't appropriate. So I'd really like to see something for a boathouse like this myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Fellner.
Sir, I was wondering if you could, oh, you're taking your presentation down. There was a slide on your presentation that wasn't in the council package that I wanted to. Can you put that back up for us, Greg, please?
Sure.
One of the photographs?
No. I didn't see it in the presentation, so,
They are, I assume that they were identical.
well, no, oh, okay.
If you could direct me to what page, I'd have.
Oh, okay.
I know they're printed on double-sided and reversed.
Yeah, and I had this little screen here. It was dwelling height, I guess, is what I was interested in.
That's the one closest to Ted.
Yeah. So I see on the contour map that the proposed cottage is going by the existing contours is 10 meters. The location of it is 10 meters higher than the location. The front of it is 10 meters higher than the location of the elevation of the existing cottage. Is that correct?
I don't have,
See you on, Jerry? Oh, no, on Ted's.
Well, I'm looking at this one, but I'm looking at the contour map too, so I didn't see this one in here.
Councillor Fellner, if I could reverse this presentation.
Yeah,
I could maybe-
that's the easiest
I
way.
think it's,
Sorry,
I think
sorry
it's
to
this
put you,
drawing.
sorry to put you through
Well,
this.
that's okay. And maybe I could provide, I think I know what you're getting at. This drawing does not show the height increase in scale. This is showing the setback of the buildings
No, I
relative to each
I
other.
understand that. I guess what I was getting to, what my question was gonna be was in order to assess the overall impact of the increased height that you're asking for, then I'd want to see what your designed finished elevation is proposed to be.
The design finish elevations are a page previous, and
They're also on page 96 of the council package.
you'll see there's some
That
green
would-
highlighted roof.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. I see the height. And then you refer to the average, final average finished grade in front of the cottage.
Right.
I would be interested to see, in order to assess the overall impact of the massing, because this building's considerably higher, even though it's is proposed to be much, much farther back from the shoreline, which is wonderful. But again, the total height of this building is determined by what you pick your final average finish grade in front of the building to be. What
And
I'd like to know was, and perhaps the design hasn't gone this far, but what would be that elevation compared to what's existing there at that location now?
Thank you. And it's a good question. And I was hoping that the photograph that I showed of the pine plantation and the existing driveway, that is the location of the new building. I
Right.
don't want to say it's flat as a pancake, but you can't find any flatter location on the lot. I anticipate those grades that are there today being very similar to the final grades when the building is completed. We worked very hard. In fact, the first place we started was at the 20-meter setback. And
Right.
we were finding real challenges accommodating this style of building design and also not having a 5-meter increase in height. So after months of consideration and topographic surveys and designs by the architect, the decision was made to abandon that 20-meter setback location and move back to the flat kind of tableland that's in that plantation area. So, and I think further to your point would be that this 10.75 meters, that's our ask. If we're wrong, we don't get any more. So the worry that we may end up with a building that's higher, I think that, is that what you're alluding to?
Well,
That-
I mean, the total height of the building is what I was trying to sort of get in my own mind is, how high is this building going to be above the water,
above the water.
right? Because I mean, that's
We do
How you're gonna
have.
be able to see it. The higher up it
do.
is, the more you're.
We do have topographic information, and
Yep.
we can confirm that for you. And the decision won't be made today,
No.
and I'll commit to getting that number for you.
Mhm.
So then you
Okay.
can make that, you can make your decision one way or the other based on that detail.
Mhm.
Would
Okay.
is that a good,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yep. Yep.
That's
Exactly
great.
what
You
I
can
was-
submit those heights through Taylor, I think.
No.
I'm very familiar with this property and actually was one of the people that planted the pine grove in 1961. So I know this property very well, and there used to be a 6-hole golf course on it that my father played with Mr. Dare. So it's a huge lot, and it's nice to see it being redeveloped. So if you can get those heights through Taylor, he can get them to all of us. But good luck with your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And your
Mr.
building.
Lucas is here
Yeah.
today. If you would like to hear from him, I think you've heard enough from me, but
And go ahead, introduce yourself.
Madam Chair, councilors, thank you. It is. You can hear me, hopefully. Yeah, I'm a big guy. I just really wanted to say, when I met my wife, well, over 40 years ago now, married her 36 years ago, she really didn't like to travel. And we didn't have a heck of a lot of money back then either. And as time went on, we found friends that had a cottage up on Doe Lake, up by Katrine area. And we absolutely fell in love with cottaging and the water and nature and you name it. We ended up buying a place in Huntsville on Vernon Lake a few years later. And then we bought a place in on Lake Joe in the Muskoka Lakes region. The property there was, I think, 428 feet waterfront, and it was about 2.9 acres, so it wasn't very deep. My wife had a concern because we'd really like to keep this property as, I think, ultimately, eventually, our primary residence. I guess from an emotional perspective, we have 3 kids and they all love being up here. And I mean, I think as a father, the most important thing to me is that our kids are together, our families are together, and they've certainly fallen in love with this whole area. And I guess when we saw the property for sale, my wife cried when she saw it. Actually, no, she didn't cry when she saw it. She cried when we came back on a boat ride with Adam Wallace, our friend and real estate agent. And she asked me, we looked at 5, 6 different properties. She asked me what I thought of that first property. And I said, well, and she started to cry. And she's not very emotional. She's an accountant type. And I was surprised to see her actually cry. And she said it was the most beautiful place she ever saw. And she said, I sure hope we have a chance that we might be able to buy it. And all that was a result of us being at the end of Jean Marie Road. And her concern was that when we're in our 80s, it's a long ways down that road. In the wintertime, if we have to get to the hospital, you name it. And this one kind of met all the boxes, if you will. So I guess I'm saying that because I want the council to understand that we have absolutely no interest and would be happy to sign whatever, that we will never subdivide the property. The beauty of the property is its size. It has so many things that are very unique. And I think we were incredibly lucky in life to be able to have a place like that. I've been through Europe extensively, many, many, many times. And honestly, except for one river in Slovenia where I was born, there isn't a single thing that I've seen that was more beautiful. Anyways, I don't know what else I could say, except that's kind of how we ended up here. And as far as the building style and the roof, I originally wanted to become an architect. I still love architecture. I draw weekly on CAD. I just enjoy it. That building, essentially, my earliest renditions are in 2011. I have modified that building 50 times. I could reproduce it probably to within 2 inches. And I've had our architect redo it 50 times because I didn't like little tiny things he did. The roof line being a little bit higher has nothing to do with the interior being larger or higher roofs or anything like that. It's simply a French chateau style, and it looks funny if you stunt it. You know, it's it's just I think, and really, I don't think you'll see it from the, in fact, we want to see the lake, but we don't want to see the boaters kind of, I mean, we will replant whatever's in front of it tastefully and put trees, because when the old building is taken down, there's going to be a huge opening. So we're going to have to fill that in. We want to fill it in once the building is constructed, so we can see through the window, so we know where the trees should go, so that our main views that we want open, and the rest will be covered up. So you'll only see bits and pieces of the building, I think, if you're going by boat. So I don't know what else I could say, but I mean, we're blessed to be here, and this is our, like
Thank
many
you.
other people
I
up
think
here
we have a
today.
question from Councillor Adams, who's on screen.
Certainly.
It's just a simple question. The further back you build from the shoreline, I know you're going to be 66 feet. Is it normal practice to allow them to build higher?
Is that a question?
That's a question for Taylor, I believe.
Okay.
We can get into that level of detail in the recommendation report, but the official plan does envision lower heights and not obstructing the tree line within the first 60 meters. So we can reference that policy though. Typically, if you want to go higher, you should go further back.
Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
There's going to be a lot of demolition. There's going to be a lot of rebuilds. You're going to be demolishing the existing primary dwelling, and you're going to build a new primary dwelling, right?
Correct.
You're going to expand the boathouse. You want a second boathouse with 1.5 stories. So then I would recommend that when the new plan comes back from planning, that there's site plan control on that piece of property. If it's what you say you're going to do, then it should be under site plan control.
I don't know what that means. But
Okay, that's really a question and a direction to Taylor, our Director of Planning, but I don't likely see it as a problem. But Ryan, you're the...
I've had a chance to speak with Mr. LG, and we're not in opposition at all to enter into a site plan agreement.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The process is that this is public consultation. It'll come back to council. I think Ryan knows that with all the details, and I hope it passes. But we're glad to have you as a neighbor.
Have a good night.
Welcome to Seguin.
those trees, I was told there was a garden there, and they planted potatoes and different things. And then I was told those trees grew naturally. Okay, I know something.
No, I can bring you probably about 6 people that are my age that all got invited over to plant seedlings when we were about 10 years old.
Hey, she's a neighbor, so that's a good thing. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors.
Thank you. Council will now close the public meeting and reconvene the regular meeting. I have a motion. So the decision on Ellery is deferred, so that item on the agenda just gets eliminated. Oh, I got to do this first. I have a motion that the public meeting held for the following matters is hereby closed and the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. Consent application B 2024-0017-H and B 2024-0027-H and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0024-H for Ellery and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2024-0022-H for Lukasik. Could I have a motion? Greg? Ken? All in favor? Okay, so to defer? Okay, so I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application numbers B 2024-0017-H and B 2024-0027-H for Ontario 2123274 Inc., subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. So I need a mover first, okay. I have to get it on the table and then you can. So can you move it? Yeah. Okay. And Terry, all right, questions?
My question is, as it's read, we're approving conditional approval, provisional approval, and it's being deferred at a request by staff. So my question is, should we be provisionally approving it? It doesn't make sense to me to be even provisionally approving it at this point. Staff has asked for a deferral, so I think it should not be going forward.
The process is that someone needs to move to defer it, and then that motion needs to be seconded, and then we vote on that. So do you want to move to defer it?
I'll move to defer it and not provisionally approve it.
If it's deferred, it wouldn't be provisionally approved. So, okay, so just a sec. It's 5A. So its deferral is moved by Greg Getty. And I need a seconder to defer it, so. And then I'm calling a vote on the deferral. All in favor of deferring it. Okay, and that is carried. So I have to go through the same process on the next half of this. So I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-104, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-007-01000 at 128 Clear Lake Road, application number R 2024-0024-H for Ontario 2123274 Inc. is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover to put it on the table? Ted and Terry. And then what I need is a mover to defer it so its approval comes off the table.
I will move it, but not approve the.
Okay, hang on. Deferred, moved. Greg Getty. Can I have a seconder for, okay, Councillor Adams, okay? And all in favor of deferring? Okay. That's carried. Thank you. You'll note that we didn't put a timeline on the deferral, which we normally do, so there's some more information has to be gathered and work with Taylor on timing. Thanks. I have a motion that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports presented on the agenda for November 4th, 2024 meeting of council. Could I have a mover? Greg. And Ken. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-125, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a subdivision amending agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Seguin and 2555569 Ontario Inc. for the development of Clear Lake Estates subdivision concession 2021-0001-F is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover to this? Councillor Bazinski and Councillor Adams. All in favor? Any questions? No? Okay, that's carried. Oh, Ted, sorry. Yes?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really happy with what I'm reading here, simply because it seems that the developer at the end of the developing stages of the subdivision want to dump it on our laps to finish the road. Now, I know that there's additional funds of 53,000 on a hold of 441,000. So say $500,000. But how much is it? It doesn't say here how much the cost is actually going to be to finish the roads. So, I mean, how can we pass something that when we don't even have the actual costs to finish the roads?
Can we ask the Director of Planning to reply, please?
Sure.
Through your worship, the original 441 number was calculated with Bob Hughes and the Township's Public Works Department for the entire cost to finish it off. By postponing it down the road, the additional $53,000 takes into account the additional wear and tear plus that was also done between Public Works and the applicant's engineer, Bob Hughes. So long story short, it's expected that we will have the funds to finish off this road at the end of the day.
That's not good enough. Because has there been an RFP put out by the staff or from roads? I mean, this should be, I think, there he is, Tom. I think Tom should have some kind of an input here.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you. So we're going to hold on to this money for a while, just because while there's a lot of construction traffic, we all know too well, increased traffic is going down that road. So we want to protect our assets in terms of, if we put it down now, there's going to be a lot of trucks, a lot of turning vehicles, or the shear of the tires. And simply, we did something similar for Lake Ridge Road as well. We held some securities to apply the final slurry seal or the final top of the hard surface, and we just finished that. So nothing's been put out for RFP. We're gonna wait. We're gonna wait for a few years until construction slows down.
So as I understand it, the tenders will go out when it's ready to be done. It could be 4 or 5 years from now.
No, I understand that. But option 2 leaves it as status quo, requiring the developer to be more heavily involved to finalize it as well. I mean, I think option 2 would be the one to be voting on, then just to go ahead and as you're wanting to, without even having any prices up front. I find that a little bit putting the cart ahead of the horse.
Okay, thank you. We've got some other questions. Councillor Fellner?
Well, I guess that leads to the question where and I have no doubt that, the estimate to provide the final seal was fairly accurate at the time it was obtained, but if the intent is not to execute the work for 5 years, then what kind of an escalation clause has been built into this number? If in fact we're taking over the liability and the responsibility to surface this road, we're relieving the developer of this responsibility for the sum of $441,000. Which was the estimated cost to do it upon the completion of the subdivision, not of the completion of the builds. So now we're looking at perhaps waiting 5 years till the thing's built out, then going out for an RFP, getting a price, and hoping that $441,000 is going to be sufficient to cover the costs in 5 years down in the future. So I guess what my question is is there an escalation clause built in this? Is there a requirement for the developer to fund any shortfall? And is there compensation for the township to take on the duties to call an RFP, award a tender, and supervise the work, all that type of thing? Because in effect, this is a duty and a responsibility of the developer, not of the township.
Director McLeod, can you reply to that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship and members council. So we did add in some inflation, and over a 5-year period, we do not have the clause of any additional funds above and beyond. However, we've had some tenders go out. We have some real world costing, as in today's dollars. So we are pretty confident in our prices. And then the other side of the coin as well, you know, if it's if it's only $300,000 worth of work, then, you know, it's something that we can, you know, use for additional monies elsewhere, I would imagine. So there's two sides of the coin on this.
Councillor Bazinski.
Yes, Tom, just a couple of questions for you. One, are there any guardrails now put up along at least the initial parts of the road? Because if you ever slipped off, it'd be a fatality. There's huge drops there.
Through your worship and council, yes, there's lots up there. We can also obviously do another review of the straightaways. There's you know, some drop-offs, but they're straightaways. Anything corners or T intersections, severe drops, there are very sturdy steel beam guide rails.
Okay, thank you. And then I must admit, I have to echo Councillor Collins and Councillor Fellner that we don't want to be taking a risk that we're going to be out money for this. As you well know, there's with construction traffic, it can beat up a road pretty badly. So do they still need to put a lift of asphalt on or just slurry?
2 phases. There's a tar and chip, and then after several months, as it cures, then we put a slurry on top of that.
So it's not asphalt.
No.
Okay, so
there are asphalt areas. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. And listen, I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat or anything. I'm trying to figure out in my own mind. So we've got a tar and chip road, which history has shown us is not as resilient over the years as asphalt. So I'm a little concerned too with the costs. I know tar and chip is less than asphalt, but you know, I didn't drive too far and I was too scared to be honest, with that road. Maybe I'm just too old for it, but anyway, I'm just concerned that, you know, after they do it, there's going to be a lot of redoing have to be done once all the construction has taken place. The scary part is, though, I'm assuming that they want to do this now so the municipality will snowplow it in the winter. Is that?
That's correct. They want us to assume ownership right away.
Well, I think, you know, in order to do that, I think you'd have to go back and try to negotiate, you know, that we'll take the money, but that if it costs more and the contractor is willing to, you know, he can do the tenders to make sure he gets the most reasonable price. But if it's more, we shouldn't be on the hook for it. That would be my feeling. So we could assume it conditionally upon the contractor paying the full cost of the bringing it up to standard. That would be what I would say anyway.
Councillor Getty and then Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, if they are looking for snow removal, can they not are we able to provide it on a contract basis without assuming responsibility for the road? Because, you know, as both Councillor Fellner and Collins had said, you know, and I understand the benefit if it comes in at 300,000. The downside is if it comes in at 700,000. So we want it to continue, but can we be contracted as a municipality to do that snow removal without assuming the responsibility for the road?
I guess I asked Tom to reply to that, but Taylor's had his hand up as well. So, Tom and Ken, I see you.
Okay.
So just a kind of room wide back from to last year, they actually did contract a contractor for services. We'd have to look at our insurance and stuff like that in terms of, you know, if we want to get contracted to go to plow it. It does add quite a different route within our own forces, which we have anticipated and we're prepared for. So it's just a matter, we might have to take that offline and just speak with insurance and, you know, what that cost of services is. I don't think it's a big deal, but depending where this decision goes, there might be some conversations on how this all looks.
So they already have a history where they have done their own contracting for snow removal prior to this.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Taylor, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest rather than defeating the amending agreement today, that we go, that I go out and I talk to a lawyer and I confirm that if there is cost overruns, that the proponent is still responsible for the cost. I did discuss that with our lawyer. They drafted the agreement in the first place, and that was noted verbally that yes, even if the $490,000 is insufficient, the proponent would still have to pay. But it might be best if I got that in writing in a future report for council to see.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Adams, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wonder, is it normal practice for the township to finish the road when it's like a subdivision? Is that normal practice? Like, shouldn't they complete everything? Like, I don't understand why the township is finishing the road.
Go ahead, Taylor.
And there's several ways that this can be done. In urban centers where all the roads are paved, it is traditionally the proponent does it because once you put a final lift of asphalt on, there's no wear and tear, and the road is very rugged and strong. And roads in Seguin where we don't have 3 or 2 layers of asphalt, but it's gravel, this becomes a bit more of an option because the wear and tear during construction is much more impactful on the road base. So if you don't go with an approach like this, it keeps the developer and their money tied up for, could be 5 to 10 years, usually 5 at a minimum. So either option is advisable by our lawyer, essentially.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the CAO is going to weigh in here. I think there's some options.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. I think you know, one of the risk avoidances in doing this is that if the developer is still around in 5 years, maybe they'll finish the road or maybe not. And I'm not suggesting that they're that type of developer, but it is a risk that if we put cash in hand, put it in the bank and made the investment, we continue to grow that money and hopefully cover costs in the future. The bigger risk is that, you know, perhaps the developer disappears, they don't finish the road, and then we're paying for the whole thing because eventually the road has to get finished. However, these are all options that I think need to be further explored. And as much as I dislike doing this, I'm going to recommend to council that you just defer this at this moment and let's get the legal opinion from the lawyer as Taylor suggested, and we'll bring back a secondary report in the very near future.
I got a question.
How?
Yep. Yes, there is an agreement in place with the developer, so that has to be reviewed again. And something added to it or whatever clause added to it but we can't leave it like it is. It has to be deferred or we go to option 2. That's my recommendation.
Are you prepared to move the deferral?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Counselor Bazinski, do you have a comment on the deferral?
No, not on the deferral. I don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to ask our CAO, is this subject to development charges, or will this be considered to have been brought in before development charges?
It's a great question. For properties that have, I'm looking at Michelle while I'm saying this, so she cut me off if I'm wrong, but for properties that have not yet pulled a building permit prior to January 1, 2025, they will be subject to development charges. For those that have a building permit already, they are exempt. And Michelle's nodding, so I think I got it right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to defer, moved by Ted Collins and seconded by Terry Fellner. All in favor of deferring and getting more information back from staff. Okay, thank you. Okay. Belvedere Heights. Is the okay. Let's get it on the table. Okay, I guess we get it on the table. What's page number 130? So, okay. I have in front of me the motion that Belvedere sent to us. I will read it. And then we'll discuss it before we put it on the table. Is that what you're suggesting? Without a mover and a seconder. Okay.
And just for information, it is the last page in the presentation that's in the package from Belvedere.
Yeah, it's on page, hang on, of your agenda package. It's the draft resolution that's on page 150 of your agenda package, but I'll read it. Whereas in June 2024, all 8 municipal owners of Belvedere Long-Term Care Home endorsed the proposal to add up to 24 new long-term care beds. And whereas the opportunity to receive $35 per diem construction funding subsidy needed to fund the new build is predicated in part on securing financing by November 8th, 2024 deadline. And whereas Infrastructure Ontario provides an option to secure construction funding in October 2024 prior to the November deadline without an upfront guarantee from all 8 municipalities. And whereas the Township of Carling has agreed to enter into agreement with Infrastructure Ontario to secure the construction loan on behalf of Belvedere Heights. And whereas Belvedere Heights will enter into a loan agreement with the Township of Carling, guaranteeing payment of all financial obligations to Infrastructure Ontario for the borrowing costs. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin endorses the Belvedere Heights proposal to enter into a loan agreement with the Township of Carling to support a 2-year construction funding loan with the guarantee that Belvedere Heights will provide funds from the operating reserves as required in advance of all Infrastructure Ontario payment terms. I just want to point out that the original founding agreement with Belvedere has all 7 municipalities owning and acting to run Belvedere, and that whether Carling takes all this on or not, the Corporation of Belvedere can always come back to us and ask for another levy or contribution. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle. They can. So one item of discussion is, do we really want Carling to hold all of the debt? Or do we want to own our portion of the debt as Belvedere was originally constructed? Or created legally. Councillor Fellner.
I will move.
Okay, and I need a seconder to put it on the table. Greg, okay.
Like,
Now, Councillor Fellner, you have the floor.
so from reviewing the documents that were given to us over this proposed expansion of the facility, which I, in concept, do not have any problem with and support. It looks like there's 8 municipalities in total, of which Seguin Township has the largest share at 35.77%. If this document's correct, and I think it probably is, I see absolutely no reason for us not to either get on board with this loan ourselves, but I don't think in any way, shape, or form I'd support the notion of letting Carling provide the financing, and then we're going to guarantee to them our portion of the financing. And the reality of it is the Belvedere board could make everybody pay it back whenever they wanted. There isn't any particular benefit to this that I see at all. We're the largest owner of this facility. We pay the largest share, and I would expect the rest of the municipalities would guarantee their proportionate share and proceed with this financing as is properly mandated within the Belvedere Charter, I would think. So, no, I'm not in agreement with this at all.
Okay, any further comments? So,
Yes, I had one.
Councillor Bazinski.
Yeah. So we're roughly a 35% owner. Just a question to Michelle. Does that mean if the facility was decommissioned, that we would have a 35% ownership in the land and so on?
Yes, that's my understanding. We're a 35% owner of that facility.
Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, I mean, I think we're not talking about upfronting the money. We're talking about backing a loan that Carling would take out for the financing. Is that my understanding?
Yes, that's what this resolution anticipates, is that we will guarantee that loan.
So it's no different than the airport or whatever. When we guarantee a loan, we're not involved in financing it. That would come out of Belvedere's reserves. And unless something catastrophic happened, we wouldn't have anything to do with it, would we?
No, that's correct. It would come from the repayment of the loan would be by Belvedere.
Thank you.
Councillor Getty.
My understanding, if I remember the presentation, was that the reason why it was being secured by a municipality is that the lending rates were lower than what Belvedere could secure. I think I'm correct on that. And if we are a 35.7% owner in the property, I agree with Councillor Fellner. I'm in support of the expansion, and I think that we have a responsibility we'll take out our portion of the loan and we'll be responsible for it, would be my position.
Thank you. Do you want to talk to this about next steps? We need this happen.
Thank you, Worship. Members of Council, I try not to read the tea leaves too much, but I suspect I have a good feeling where this is going, and I'll suggest that you're likely to defeat that motion at this point, and I would just ask that you refer it over to myself to follow up with the folks from Belvedere tomorrow to determine the appropriate steps going forward, understanding that, you know, we are the largest stakeholder in their organization, and therefore we are prepared to back our proportionate share. I understand the Infrastructure Ontario loan comes through municipalities. They quoted in their presentation at the last council meeting that speed of getting that application done was the priority. Last update I had, they're still waiting for the province, so that means there's still time for us to get the loan organized and back the loan appropriately. So with council's defeat of this, I suspect, I'll take it upon myself tomorrow to see if I can chase down those details and express your position.
Thank you. I think that's next step is I'm comfortable with it. So we have a motion on the table. Are there any in favor of having Carling hold the whole loan guarantee? All against? Okay, so that is defeated. The next one is discussion, and I'm going to ask Jason to kind of lead this one off. That we talked about this briefly in my council report last meeting. Do we want to take any steps with NOHFC to do anything against the Muskoka inclusion?
Your worship, members of council, I think you spoke to it very eloquently last meeting, your worship, that the ministry is exploring the concept of including the Muskoka region within the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation's funding envelope, and possibly more, meaning possibly a realignment of where the Northern Ontario border is. We're a little unclear on what that looks like. The risk, of course, here is that when you add the district of Muskoka and all of its municipalities into it, the pot gets thinned out a little further. We know how valuable NOHFC funding can be for us as a municipality, certainly for the businesses that have used it to establish themselves or support growth. And so unless there is a commitment that the pot grows, this inherently leads to likely less funding coming to Seguin, to West Parry Sound, to Northern Ontario. My suggestion to council at this point would be to instruct us to draft a letter to send to the minister, copying all the appropriate parties, including perhaps even the premier and our MPP, to suggest that we don't support this unless the funding grows proportionately to ensure that the benefit to Northern Ontario municipalities stays with the Northern Ontario municipalities. So with that, your worship, I'm happy to answer any questions or take your direction from here.
Any comment from councillors? I think a letter is, in my opinion, very important. The wording of it needs to talk specifically about the increasing of the allocation, whether, I don't know how they do it, whether it's per person, per revenue, I don't know. But I also think that the wording of it needs to be, so it's not sour grapes like we don't want to share with Muskoka. We need the pot to get bigger, because if they go that way, it's a huge increase in population. Councillor Getty.
I agree. I think it will have potentially have a substantial impact on, grant funding that's available for us. But I would think that there are many municipalities further north that would be impacted even greater than us. And I think that, as historically having been part of the northern communities, I think we have a responsibility to push back on it and protect not only ourselves, but some of the more remote and secluded communities that require that funding to put any kind of process in place. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on Councillor Getty's comments. You know, I speak to colleagues around the province, and there are smaller municipalities that this makes or breaks their year, and stressing that funding out any further is going to prove to be a challenge. And as you were talking, Council, I sort of reconsidered my position on writing a letter. I think perhaps what you ought to do is refer this back to us to bring back a resolution that council passes, so that it's a council resolution being forwarded to the minister, the premier, MPP, and maybe all Northern Ontario municipalities, just to express our position in support of or in opposition to the potential.
Councillor Collins.
This originated. Talk loud enough.
They don't hear you on there.
Oh, anyways, this originated previously from the Mike Harris government. That's when they put up the boundary road, or the boundary of where the north begins, and it was at Seguin Township, at the lower end of Seguin Township, and that was during the David Kahn. He was the mayor at that time, and I remember it because we went to his place and we were celebrating that from the government doing that because of the grants that we're going to be receiving, that we have over these past years. So I would also send a letter to the ex-premier too, to see what he thinks about this. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what we're saying is let's bring a resolution back to council that we can forward and include all of our other neighbors in it. Okay, Tom, I think you're on deck for this one. I will read the motion. I have a motion that resolution, whereas official statistics from the Government of Ontario confirm that rural roads are inherently more dangerous than other roads, and whereas despite only having 17% of the population, 55% of the road fatalities occur on rural roads. And whereas rural, northern, and remote municipalities are fiscally strained by maintaining extensive road networks on a smaller tax base, and whereas preventing crashes reduces the burden on Ontario's already rural-strained healthcare system, and whereas roadway collisions and associated lawsuits are significant factors in runaway municipal insurance premiums, preventing crashes can have a significant impact on improving municipal risk profiles. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin requests that the Government of Ontario take action to implement the Rural Road Safety Program that Good Roads has committed to lead. It will allow Ontario's rural municipalities to make critical investments needed to reduce the high number of people being killed and seriously injured on Ontario rural roads. Further, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, Honorable Prabhat Zakaria, Minister of Transportation, Honorable Kinga Surma, Minister of Infrastructure, Honorable Rob Flack, Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Lisa Thompson, Minister of Rural Affairs, Honorable Trevor Jones, Associate Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, and Honorable Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health and Good Roads. Could I have a mover? Greg Getty, and a seconder. Councillor Bazinski. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby authorize the following members of council to attend the 2025 Good Roads Conference being held March 30th to April 2nd, 2025 in Toronto, Ontario. Reimbursement of expenses will be as per township policy. Who would like to attend? Councillor Getty. Anybody else? Councillor Fellner? Counselor Bazinski and Counselor Adams, no?
No.
Okay, so the motion is for Counselor Getty and Counselor Fellner to attend. Could I have a mover? Ken, and seconded by Counselor Bazinski. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, another long one. I have a resolution that whereas the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, FONOM, recognizes how vital the forest industry is to the economy in Ontario, whereas the success of the forest sector is critical to the economic and social prosperity of Ontario communities, employing 137,000 people. Whereas the forest industry has invested over $3.8 billion in Ontario since 2018, and whereas Ontario has an opportunity to market global investment in the bioeconomy, similar to critical minerals and electric vehicle manufacturing, and becoming a leading international jurisdiction. And whereas over the last 20 years, the North American pulp and paper sector has seen a significant rationalization in production capacity, with investment dollars going to competing international jurisdictions. And whereas in the last year, Ontario has seen 3 pulp, paper, and containerboard mills idle or close, negatively impacting communities and the solid wood mills that depend on these facilities as markets for mill byproducts and pulpwood. Whereas U.S. tariffs on softwood lumber are expected to double in 2025 to approximately 30%. And whereas Ontario should work with federal colleagues to pursue a softwood lumber settlement that works in the best interest of Ontario lumber producers and advocate for a financial backstop. And whereas Ontario has an opportunity to procure greater amounts of energy, i.e. electricity, heat, fuels, biochar, etc., from forestry byproducts and forests to assist in heavy industry decarbonization on Ontario's forecasted electricity demands. And whereas Ontario's successful and oversubscribed forest biomass program should continue post-2027, and whereas Ontario will actively seek investment to restart idled softwood craft lines in Ontario and Quebec to provide immediate relief for some sawmill producers. Whereas Ontario's $10 million sawmill chip program ending in March 25, 2025, will likely need to continue and expand in the absence of an immediate restart of a currently idled pulp mill to avoid curtailments at solid wood facilities. And whereas 5-year bilateral power purchase agreements with forest biomass-fired electrical generation facilities are insufficient and should be expanded, both in terms of length and volume, to provide communities, industry, and workers with a certain future. Whereas the Public Forest Access Roads Funding Program, which provides for the public use of Ontario forests, should be increased to $75 million per year to reflect inflationary pressures and support legacy infrastructure upgrades such as roads, bridges, and water crossings. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin supports the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities in their support for the implementation of the Ontario Forest Industries Association 2025 Ontario budget recommendations in supporting of attracting investment and maintaining forest operations and employment in Ontario. Further, be it resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to a whole lot of ministers. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Fellner. Seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Woof. That was a long one. Okay. We are on page 169, of the council package. And we have a memo from our CFO on basically budget process going forward, what's in, what's out. And the purpose of today's discussion is to give staff direction so that at the next meeting, they will be bringing back a budget that addresses our concerns and our goals. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you can see from the memo, we have a lot of budget pressures this year, and the recent levy from the OPP has just made it 10 times worse. The increase in the OPP levy for 2025 is projected to be $258,000, which is a 1.674 tax rate increase on its own. So what we are asking for is some direction from council. We will not be able to make that 3% mandate that we talked about back in August for our operations for 2025, mainly because of these third-party levies. And I'd be happy to take any questions before we continue on.
Councillor Bazinski.
Yeah, it's a painful situation. I think, though, rather than assuming all our programs can go on unchecked, I think what I'd like to see is an evaluation of our expenses, which we'll be talking about in the budget. But for example, if we were planning to buy any vehicles, if we're planning, there are a lot of things that I want to see, because we could defer purchase of vehicles and equipment for a year. We could defer a whole variety of things for a year. And I'd like to see some reporting on that before I make a decision. I don't just assume that everything that we've got on the table right now we can do. It's like if you had a family budget and all of a sudden something major happened, you'd have to make adjustments within your family budget. And it's a tough situation. And I think we should be telling the province that the full increase shouldn't be passed on to townships. I believe a number of townships are doing that. But regardless, I think we have to have a plan ready in case the province turns a deaf ear to that. And I would think for our ratepayers, they'd want to see that we looked at all of the purchases or whatever, and have we been fiscally responsible? You could put another year on a vehicle, or there are other things along those lines we could do. So I'd like to see that in our budget discussions coming up in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, my personal opinion, and it's been my personal opinion for a number of years, that these levies that we have no control over, such as the OPP, DSAP, Belvedere, EMS, Belvedere isn't listed on this one. By combining them into our operational budget, we're in effect taking responsibility that we agree to these things. And to me, it makes no sense. I mean, we need to budget accordingly for the things we can control, not the things that we can't control. And these need to be stripped out of our budget and presented as a number on themselves, right? And I think it's important to get, especially, we snuck through the last number of years since I sat at the table where you know, they're minor increases here and there, but out here, all of a sudden, the day of reckoning, here's $250,000, a 21.28% increase from over what we gave them last year with no rhyme or reason to it. I don't think anybody's gonna try, even from their organization, is gonna try and tell us that they give us, 21.28% better service. I mean, I don't see too much presence in this township. It's more of a reactive service than a proactive service. So whether in fact, the province has got to understand that you want our taxpayers to pay for this, that's fine, but we should in no way, shape, or form condone this. And these numbers should be not put in to our operational budget. They should be portrayed on their own for what they are, because we have no control over it. And I think it's crazy to ask us to justify these numbers when we can't control them. So, I mean, that puts us in obviously in a difficult position. I think that it's very important to keep the 1.5% increase for infrastructure. It's critical. If we don't keep on this, we're gonna get someone down the road in a world of hurt. It might not be us, but it'll be somebody. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers of the municipality to just ignore the future needs of keeping our infrastructure in good shape. I think what we really need to hone in on is our operating budget. What inroads have we made to find any type of efficiencies within our own organization, in our waste management, in our roads. The other thing I think that's very important is not to ignore the amount of money that's needed to keep our roads. We're all in agreement that our roads could be in better shape. And we're not going to get them in better shape by, short funding, as a knee-jerk reaction, because all of a sudden we've gotten hit with this increase that we can't control. I mean, that's ridiculous. Those are our assets, and they're things that our constituents use on a daily basis. And we've already heard from a subsequent report that, the safety aspect of our roads is not very good. And that's, you're not going to deal with this by cutting back on essential services. So to me, I think you got to look at hitting your goal, take this out of it, hit your goal, whether it's a hiring freeze for a year or whatever it is. Every new request this year, would have to be considered very thoughtfully. Whether in fact it was a service level request that's completely justified, and then I think we need to go after the province and say, what's the deal? You got to wind this back. This is punitive. So that's my comments to this, but I think the time has come to strip these levies out of our budget and identify them for what they are. And I mean, we can't be held accountable for something that we have absolutely no input on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I completely agree with you that we need to present it differently to our ratepayers. I do think we should push back on the OPP increase and ask if we're getting 21% more service, because I get a lot of complaints from ratepayers about the lack of service, particularly with the marine units. So I'd like to see us strip out all the levies that we can't control, talk about what percentage tax increase that represents, and then asks, I know staff is looking carefully at what we can manage, and then that becomes the goal of what they can manage. But Councillor Geddes next.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with both the comments from yourself and from Councillor Fellner. In regards to removing the levies, moving forward, but I think, the reality is that we have always included them, and they were included in that 3% target that we set for staff, which I think, I call a spade a spade. It's ludicrous for a 21% plus increase from the OPP. But the reality is we can stamp our feet and make a fuss, but we have to in reality deal with the practical hand that they've dealt us. The training that I was supposed to do, the webinar a couple of weeks ago that got canceled on the Thursday night at 11 o'clock, was no doubt canceled because we are not the only municipality that has exploded in regards to this. And obviously the province has taken a look at it. I think best case scenario, they reduce it. I don't think it's practical that we're going to see anything less than 5 if they reduce it. There may even be more, but we have to assume for this budgetary process at this time for a draft budget that we're getting hit with the whole 21.28%. So then there's no doubt in my mind that our CAO and senior management have been killing themselves trying to find efficiencies on things that can be deferred, cut, moved. I have no doubt in regards to that. When I look at the numbers right now, the draft is sitting at 7.5. To Councillor Fellner's point, if we go to a hiring freeze this year with no additional hours being augmented to any of the positions, that would take us, and I might be a little off on my numbers, that would take us down below 6 to about 5.925. If we have success along with the other municipalities to reduce the OPP levy to 5%, that takes us down to 4.645 plus or minus a little bit. I think I might be pretty close. And I think the question that I read in it, I appreciate, and I can't imagine trying to prepare a budget to bring back to this table with the constraints that have been put on by the levy increases, not only the OPP, but another 82,000 from DSAB and another 41,000 from EMS. The question is, direction from council, are we going to hold them specifically to 3? Even if all of those things came out of the equation, we didn't hire any positions, we didn't give any extra hours anywhere, we were able to get the levies down to 5%, which I think best case scenario, guarantee that, staff is coming in at 4.645. And I think as a council, we have to give them a little bit of flexibility. I'm not sure that we have to give them a number, but I know that when I say 465, I include the 3 and the 1.5 for infrastructure deficit. But I think that we have to be able to be prepared as a council to give a little bit of a squeeze, that we're not right at 3 and not at 1.5. I think we should be acknowledging, I'm willing to acknowledge that there can, it might be slightly above that 3, but I think that obviously, in a best case scenario, that would be the target we would look for.
Thank you. I just want to point out that other municipalities do remove the levies, and it becomes a communications challenge when you are announcing your taxes. But I think whether we've done it that way in the past or not, it's not necessarily reason to do it if we communicate properly, because other municipalities and our auditor say, take them out.
And Madam Mayor, I've actually had this discussion with Jason. I think that whether we're successful or we're not successful, I think it's important that we should get this information out to the community, that these are the stresses. It's not the municipality. It's not staff that are looking to increase taxes to this extent. We realize the demands that are on the community, but the reality is we're looking at a substantial amount of money that we have no control over. And I think whether we get a reduction or don't get a reduction, I think we should get it out and start communicating to people so that people understand we are going to hopefully pass a resolution to, make demands of the government or ask something of the government. And I think that when people realize what the provincial government potentially is downloading to the community, that may get a groundswell of further response, which may have more of an impact to help alleviate the process.
Thank you. And I've had a couple calls from constituents saying, is the OPP the new piggy bank in Queen's Park? Councillor Bazinski, you're next, and then Councillor Fellner.
Thank you. I would agree to identify the portions of the budget that we have no control over and communicate that to people. I think they need to understand that that's happening. And then I think we need to look at all of the possibilities to reduce our own internal costs, and it may be a bit painful, and we may have to defer projects that we had wanted to do this year, and we may have to look at a hiring freeze, as was mentioned. I think all of those things are really on the table, and when we're presented with the draft budget, those things should be considered in the draft budget.
Thank you. RCAO would like to weigh in.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to get a little clarity because I've now heard 3 different councillors speak to a hiring freeze. And when you tell me hiring freeze, that means if an existing complement vacates their position, I don't backfill. So what I think you're saying is deferral of any new positions, but I want to be crystal clear because hiring freeze to me in my terminology means if someone it doesn't matter which department, a roads guy decides to retire, I'm not filling that position. That's what a freeze is to me, but I don't think you're actually saying that. And I just want to get clarity before we go any further.
Councillor Getty, do you want to answer that?
And I guess I'm the one who said hiring freeze within all my numbers there. I completely agree. No new addition of personnel, no expansion of hours. But 100% that if you have staff and they leave through attrition or transfer or retirement, that they are backfilled and they're included in it. I apologize if there caused any confusion on that.
Councillor Fellner.
Long-winded thing. I omitted to say that COLA, grid movement, healthcare benefits, we don't touch those.
They're untouchable.
They're untouchable.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do challenge staff. We've got good staff and bright staff I agree with Councillor Getty to do the best that you can to bring this thing in. If there is something that, there was a guy that wrote a very good book a number of years ago called The Wealthy Barber. And he basically said that, the difference between running a business and running, your personal finances is a business only has needs. It doesn't have wants. It only has needs, where a person has both needs and wants. And given enough time, you'll rationalize a want into a need. So I think a municipality is somewhere in the middle there, I think. So I have all the faith that they'll bring something in that's palatable based on the.
Okay, Ken, go ahead, Councillor Adams.
I just want to say I feel bad because staff is the ones that are going to be, are going to have to work with this, because of the OPP and the other ones. They're the ones who are going to be suffering. Because I know a lot of times they need the help. And what's it going to be like next year? And we're going to be facing this again where we're going to have to put a freeze on hiring and stuff like that. I just feel bad that staff is the one that's going to suffer by this, to me. Thanks.
Okay, I'm just going to try and summarize for a second. Councillor Collins, okay?
I know I'm the last man on the totem pole here. But just to clarify even further, what council is saying is that as Councillor Fellner said, that yes, we don't touch COLA, grid movement, or compensation review, or healthcare, no offense, but or insurance. If there's an increase in insurance, then we have to take that in. It's actually departmental operations that at this point we're looking at, I think, and that's under new. I know that we know that there's departments that want to hire for 2025. Climate change. There's community services and communications. They wanted some staff. And the library. So they will not be able to go ahead with that hiring of personnel. But we're still going to continue on with the two hirees, finishing up with the two roads personnel, the two new personnel that we hired in January this year, right? So I'm just kind of like putting everything together. But as Councillor Adams has said, yeah, it's going to be a little hard on staff, but we're looking at a 7.5 increase, and we have to cut that down. Simple as that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. We have a couple things. We do have a resolution here that we want to send to the province to object to the OPP. So after we have this budget discussion, we'll get to that resolution. What I'm hearing is that we're going to take all the levies and we're going to communicate them differently to our ratepayers and I think to our staff, in fairness. That is direction to staff to get them out of there from a communications point of view. I'm also hearing that as a council, we're giving staff some flexibility on the 3%. It's still, what do I call, an aspirational goal, but come back at the next meeting with your very, very sharpest pencil and your best estimate of what we can do. I do not believe it is up to this council to get into the departmental budgets or what's on and what's off from a strategic point of view. That's staff's role. I think our CAO and our treasurer have heard of some ideas that we've floated, possibly hiring freeze, but I would like to hand the challenge back to staff to bring us what they say is the most important strategic budget. We have a strategy, and a strategic plan that puts environment first, that says we're going to lead, says we're going to grow, and we're going to connect, albeit hard to connect with some of the people that don't want to connect with us. But I believe that staff has their marching orders. I hope you got them now, that 3 isn't set in stone. We don't like 7. We probably don't even like 5.5. But what you're being asked to do is manage the stuff we do, and we all will help communicate. We're going to need some Valerie help here. What levies do to the pocketbook. Is that a okay summary? Any discussion? Do you guys have what you need for now and the next 2 weeks?
I think we've heard loud and clear. I've got several pages of notes, and thank goodness we record these things so we can come back and watch and make sure we pick up every detail, including clarity around definition of certain terminology. So I think we're okay at this point in time to go to work which, by the way, never stopped. We've been working, we knew this was a challenge, so we've been working very, very hard over the last number of weeks to start bringing this down and prioritizing our requests and our needs. So we will bring council something that we hope is palatable at the next meeting of council is our intent.
Okay, and I just want to reiterate that right now, the 1.5% for infrastructure, we would like to see it stay in as best you can. I think it's important that we don't burden our next generations with stuff. So now I'm going to read the resolution that we're going to send to a whole bunch of ministers, is the way I'm going to say it again. So I have a resolution. Whereas current police services within the Township of Seguin, hereafter referred to as the Township, are provided by the Ontario Provincial Police, hereinafter referred to as the OPP. And whereas the Township and the local OPP detachment have worked in a positive, collaborative, and effective manner for decades, and whereas historical increases in OPP annual billing statements have trended around 5%. And whereas the OPP submitted their 2025 annual billing statement to the Township on October 4th, 2024, that identifies $258,155, which is a 21.28% increase from 2024 to 2025, that will translate to an approximate 1.675% tax rate increase on top of what the Township was contemplating for the residents of Seguin. And whereas the Township was not consulted nor provided any advance notice from the Commissioner regarding the significant cost increase received for the OPP services. And whereas the Township cannot afford to absorb this unexpected and entirely preventable increase without causing undue financial strain to our taxpayers. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin, thereafter referred to as the Council, wishes to dispute the 2025 OPP annual billing statement. And further, that Council requests that the 2025 OPP annual billing statement be reduced to an approximate 5% increase that is more manageable for the Township and in line with historical trends. And further, that any increase above the 5% be absorbed by the province, as the additional costs are directly the result of collective bargaining that was within the control of the OPP and should have been known to be financially unsustainable for the municipalities that now need to pay the bill. And further, that a copy of this resolution goes to a whole bunch of ministers. Can I have a mover? Councillor Getty? Seconder, Councillor Fellner? All in favor? Thank you. And I would encourage you and any of your ratepayers that feel this way to contact their member of provincial parliament, because I think individual voices are going to be as important as council resolutions. I have number 8. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-107, being a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of a transfer of parcels of land, part of Lot 34, Concession 10, Foley, designated as Part 2 on Plan 42R-22535, Seguin, PIN 52183-0212, LT, portion of a road known as Glen Burnie Road, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a motion to put it on the table? Ken and Terry. And I believe it's Tom that's going to speak to this. Tom, are you there to tell us what this really is?
I thank you. I think this might have been Taylor's file.
Okay, we're going to pass the buck here.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know if he's still online or stepped away for a second. I just stepped. Yeah,
There's
there he is.
Taylor. Taylor,
Thanks.
can you
Thanks, Taylor.
explain it?
Wait, let me just get to the spot in the agenda. My computer screen is a.
It's on page 177 of the council package.
One second. Thank you for that. This is Tom and my file, but this was the Glen Burnie property and a portion of the municipal road. Our road was on their property. So as they were going through their files and their surveys, they said, "Hey, Seguin, would you like your road to be on your property?" And we agreed that that is the best for all parties. So this is just transferring a public road on private lands to us where it should be.
Okay. Thank you. And I don't think there's any costs associated, are there? Other than the survey?
It's a legal cost to get all the paperwork done and facilitate the transfer.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Taylor or Tom? Nope. All in favor? Thank you. Council reports. You're the, hang on.
Okay.
Ward 1. You're on, Ken.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much. It's been pretty quiet. October the 7th after council meeting, I attended the chamber meeting. October the 24th, I attended the museum meeting. And that's all I have. It's been pretty quiet, actually.
Thank you, and I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Councillor Bazinski.
Likewise, it's been pretty quiet with me as well. I had some ratepayers call me about the Clear Lake proposal. It's not in my ward, but I guess I get around. Then there were just some questions about the access point on Otter Lake Long Arm for next spring. And other than that, not too much has been going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Getty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quiet for meetings the last couple of weeks. 30th of October, I attended the tree planting on the Humphrey Trail with the kids from kindergarten from Humphrey Public School. It was a perfect day. It was nice to see 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds out in t-shirts planting trees at the back of the facility. So it was a great day. And I've been probably in and out of the building more in the last couple of weeks, speaking to staff in regards to a number of issues, budget being one of them, and a number of calls relative to both budget and a number of things going on in the community. I just want to thank staff for their patience because I know it's been a busy couple of weeks with everything going on with the budget process. So to take the time, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fellner.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of seemed to have lost about 2 weeks this month and was unable to attend the last council meeting. I really don't have anything to report since that council meeting. I did have a meeting of the new pool and wellness center after that I probably haven't reported on. I think good meeting. The building is moving out of the ground. Some of the concrete's poured. I think it's good progress. We were able to get an agreement at that meeting to put in an official agreement to put in a number of additional seats in the pool area, in the gym area. It was a bit of a long, drawn out process that I must thank the mayor and our illustrious CAO here. I don't like to thank him too much, but we're instrumental in getting this through. I think it should, by no means it's perfect, but it does satisfy the needs of the special interest groups, the groups that are going to be using this facility on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I felt pretty good about that. I was unable to attend the Recreation Committee meeting, but I hear that things went well, and that's about all I have to report.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've just been dealing with bylaw on problematic issue out on Lake Manitowaba with a few residents there. And other than that, just been quiet.
Okay, thank you. October 21st was the CBDC Entrepreneurs Breakfast, and basically a full morning. I didn't stay for the whole thing, but it was energizing to see the young entrepreneurs in West Perry Sound building their business and acting as the speakers. I also had a Zoom meeting with the Georgian Communities Group, which is the group that is likely to develop at the Perry Sound waterfront and the new hotel. They're very interested in what's going on in West Perry Sound, and I think we'll hear lots of news from them. 28th, I had a fundraising committee meeting. We're moving ahead. The Moose campaign matching ends on the 23rd of this month. So if you want to make any donations and have them doubled, do it in the next couple of weeks. On the 31st, Humphrey was alive with ghosts and goblins. The Halloween howl upstairs was amazing. What the volunteers turned that upstairs into. The only complaint I heard was there were too many people in there and it was too hot. Even little kids were coming down and going, "Can I take my costume off? It's too hot upstairs." And as you probably know, it was pouring rain. So the people that came with treats in their trunks came inside to the hockey arena, and I think it was a big success overall. It was slated to be from 5 till 7. The little ones started at about 4:15. And I was back in Rosso by 7:30, and it wasn't raining then. The streets of Rosso were alive with kids. They were everywhere. Then on November 1st, some of us attended Emergency Management Control Group, which you'll be hearing more about. That's headed up by Sean. And tomorrow at 10:30, there will be a ribbon cutting, excuse me, of our EV charging stations with Lakeland. They are fully operational. So, and I've seen a couple cars actually pulled up at them and charging. So that's my news. Your turn.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of quick updates. First off, the landfill has switched to winter hours and is open Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And as Councillor Getty noted, students from the kindergarten and grade 8 classes at Humphrey Public School joined Seguin Township staff and council members to participate in the tree planting project on the Humphrey Nature Trails. Special thank you to Hydro One, who donated over 200 white spruce trees for the planting. The Township's Recreation and Culture Committee is hosting 2 upcoming events: the Oroville Christmas Market on November 9th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and the Seguin Kids Christmas Party on December 14th. Please visit the Township website or Seguin Facebook page for details. The Humphrey Community Center Canteen will very, very shortly be open to the public. We're targeting mid-November with a variety of refreshments available for patrons. And the streaming app Live Barn is now up and running at the Humphrey Arena, allowing folks to watch what's happening on ice, whether it be a hockey game or a figure skating competition or whatever the case might be, live streamed, and you can watch from anywhere in the world. So watch our social media and websites for details. The Township's municipal offices, as just a reminder, will be closed on Remembrance Day. Ceremonies will be held across the Township on Sunday, November 10th and Monday, November the 11th. So please visit seguin.ca for details. And a little off script, but I do want to just share and thank the residents that use our transfer sites responsibly. We want to thank you for your commitment to responsible waste management practices. And for those of you who don't understand how to use our transfer sites appropriately, like those who abused the Turtle Lake site this past weekend, please visit our website or give us a call so you can learn more about responsible waste management. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and correspondence as presented on the agenda for the November 4th meeting of council. Favor, Terry, Greg, all in favor? And I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-108, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Mario, Councillor Fellner, all in favor? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this regular meeting at 5 p.m. exactly to meet again on Monday, November 18th, or at the call of the mayor. Terry and Greg, can I remind everybody, the Remembrance Day services that you agreed to go to are this Sunday if they're at the church, and Monday at the school, and the offices are closed. So pick up your wreaths sometime later this week. You're not going to one? Oh. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Get well.
You know what, at some point, that's what's going to, it's going to result in closing down sites, increased cost of that.
Last time we did it, Ted, the cameras lasted 3 days.
Where?